Hi, I'm Paul Feinberg, host of UCLA Anderson's podcast, and I'm here today with Assistant Professor Robert Zeithammer, and we're going to be discussing reverse pricing. Robert, why don't you begin by just telling us what reverse pricing is?
Reverse pricing is a new pricing format that's been pioneered by Priceline, and it's different from standard pricing because instead of the seller, the company, setting the price, posting the price and just offering people to buy or not at a given level, they solicit bids from customers and then decide whether or not to accept or reject each bid.
Okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts of your research, why don't you talk a little bit about your results, then we'll talk a little bit about how you came to them.
Since this is such a new pricing format, we became interested in defining the right way to do it, to, in some sense, deriving what's the optimal way to reverse price. And there are two questions we focused on. The first question we focused on was, should a reverse pricing seller charge a margin, or should they charge a fee for the privilege to bid? So in Priceline's case, should Priceline make their money by collecting a difference between the bid and their cost, what the cost here being the price at which they can obtain the ticket that they're selling, or should, on the other hand, Priceline first collect a small fee from the bidders, from the customers, and then let them bid only if they bid the fee.
Okay, so talk a little bit about the research itself, the different methodology you used.
The methodology here is a theoretical model. We make some assumptions about the kind of bidders and kind of customers that Priceline could be facing, the kind of wholesale costs, the kind of prices from airlines that they could be facing, and then we solve mathematically what would be the right way to do things. And the interesting thing we find is that it's almost never a good idea to make your money on the margin. Instead, it's more profitable for Priceline to first charge an upfront fee and then set the margin to zero. In some sense, setting a margin to zero means passing on the savings from the airlines all the way to the customers.
Why is that? Why is it more profitable for Priceline to charge these fees instead of just make money by selling more tickets?
The short answer is that it allows more trades to happen. A more detailed answer is that when you're asking people to bid against a secret threshold, because Priceline has a threshold below which it won't accept a bid for a given ticket, two things distort the market away from efficiency. One is that Priceline, since it's trying to make money, will reject some bids that are potentially profitable, in a sense that those are bids that are higher than their wholesale costs. But since they're trying to make money on the margin, they must reject them in order to raise the bid levels. Otherwise, bidders wouldn't bid enough. And at the same time, bidders are distorting their bids because they're not bidding their full maximum willingness to pay. Instead, they are bidding a little bit less than that to get a good deal, to create an opportunity to save money. And these two distortionary effects create a lot of potential trades that don't occur in the market. And switching from charging a margin to charging an entry fee reduces these distortionary effects. It makes people bid more and allows more trades to happen because the threshold is now lowered.
What's to stop someone, a consumer using Priceline or anyone else using reverse pricing, from just bidding over and over again until they find the exact cheapest price? I mean, there's a lot of information out there for consumers. How does Priceline or similar companies avoid this from happening?
Well, Priceline tries several ways to do this. It doesn't allow you to submit another bid right away. And so you have to wait some time, and there are ways to get around that, of course, but it's cumbersome. And it's actually another benefit of switching from the margin model to the entry fee model, because if you're charging a fee every time somebody bids, they'll of course think twice before spending that fee, trying to fish out what that hidden threshold is, what that cost is. Moreover, we find that it's actually in Priceline's interest to make as much information about their costs available to the customers and help them decide whether or not they would get a good deal at the current time. And that's because if you're making money on the entry fee, you would like to convince customers to pay the entry fee. One way to convince them is to convince them they're going to get a good deal. So rather than keeping customers in the dark, with entry fees, it's now in Priceline's interest to make this information publicly available. So that whole problem goes away.
I think everyone knows Priceline is in the travel industry. Are there other companies using reverse pricing? What's sort of out there other than Priceline?
This format is surprisingly more popular in Europe than in the United States. There are discount airlines in Germany that use it to price all their tickets, as well as consumer durable websites in Europe that use this reverse pricing model to sell their goods. And while we cannot make some predictions about will reverse pricing take over, are we going to all buy groceries using reverse pricing, we do make some assumptions in our model about the kind of retailer who benefits from it. And the key assumption here is that reverse pricing is useful because it can overcome the menu cost problem, which is a problem faced by a retailer with very different costs that vary all the time from day to day across many different products, and it's just too costly to find optimal prices to post. In that situation, it helps.
Are there any differences or similarities between, say, eBay's auction methodology or even eBay's, I think they call it Buy It Now system? Is Buy It Now similar to reverse pricing?
Not really. The big difference between auctions and reverse pricing is that in auctions you compete against other customers for the same good, but in reverse pricing you do not. In reverse pricing it's just a bilateral negotiation between the customer and the seller.